Hi, PNCFL participants. Welcome to our session on Languages Without Borders, a project that's about promoting equitable access to language education. I'm Michelle Ancio Aoki, and I've been involved with WAFLT and PNCFL for many years. I was also the World Languages Program Supervisor for Washington State and also worked in Seattle School District. I'm retired now, but I'm an affiliate instructor with the Slavic Department at the University of Washington.
Hi, I'm Russ Hugo. I'm from the University of Washington Language Learning Center.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Bridget Yaden. I'm a professor at Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, Washington, and also the executive director of PNCFL.
To round us out, I am Veronica Trapani-Hubner. I am the current Associate Director for World Languages and International Education at our Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. So we'd like to start our session with a land acknowledgement. You can see here that we have many of the tribes listed, and that we acknowledge that these are the tribes that have stewarded this land since time immemorial, and that we are lucky enough. And so I hope you will take a second to acknowledge and see where you are today.
Today's session is to kind of reintroduce you to our project Language Without Borders. In particular, we're focused on expanding pathways for languages and course sharing between K-12 and higher education. Today, we're just going to take a few minutes to share with you some of the challenges and some of the opportunities and just some of the things we've been involved in over the past year in improving access to and support for all languages in the Pacific Northwest.
We have a new website. You can see the URL there at the bottom. And you might notice that the URL is the University of Washington URL. The project is not directly affiliated with UW. We're just using their server space. So this is a statewide organization. Everybody is welcome to participate, and we're all trying to collaborate, but we welcome you to please visit the new website, reach out to us, and we'll be talking about some ways that you can participate more as the session continues.
I just wanted to give a little perspective on why Languages Without Borders from the higher ed perspective. We know that enrollment in world languages is low, but enrollment for less commonly taught languages is exceptionally low. We really risk losing our incredibly valuable and rare language classes, including Indigenous languages, but also languages that used to be maybe not so less commonly taught. At my own institution, for example, we've recently lost German and Norwegian and classics. We know that external recruitment is a key tool in preserving these important courses. And so we need to be creative and collaborative about thinking through recruitment. And it is crucial, as always, to provide equitable access to students at other institutions.
And Languages Without Borders also has a K-12 component. We've had a really great decade of progress starting in 2010 with our competency-based credit testing. But what ends up happening is that not every language has a test. And sometimes if there is, it is much more expensive. So districts are forced to make choices, right? Can you pay for 10 Spanish assessments or 2 Fulani? Okay, and so really seeing what that is. But we really want to make sure that everyone has access to those credits on their high school transcript, as well as the seal of biliteracy. And so that is something that currently not all districts are offering all tests. And again, that can come down to budget, planning, scheduling, lots of different reasons. And we really want to make sure that students aren't leaving high school without having the opportunity to test and making sure that they know that these things are available.
Who are some of the stakeholders in the work of Languages Without Borders? Well, one that comes forward really immediately is speakers of heritage languages, including Indigenous languages from our communities. These are the languages that have generally been left behind. People haven't really thought about how to make sure that students have a chance to learn their language in an academic setting and to take it to a higher level of proficiency. So it's both the learners of those languages and the languages themselves that have not been properly recognized in K-12 or higher education in our state up until now.
We also want to include, when we think about society as a whole on this list, to think about community schools. And there's many nonprofits in our area that are doing a lot of wonderful advocacy for languages, particularly for heritage language learners. So we're going to talk a little bit now about some of the latest developments that we've been working on here with the project. The first is recently, back in August of 2022, we held a summit for less commonly taught languages, or LCTLs. And you can see the URL there. There's information about the event and some great resources. We strongly recommend that you check that out. We had some really wonderful, wonderful speakers, and information was collected, and a lot of the attendees shared some extremely valuable information. And a lot of that went into, which we'll talk about there, a book chapter to talk about some of the challenges specific to the state. And we'll also add later on, but just as a footnote here, that we're still interested in hearing from educators like you and community activists. So this was not a one-time thing, and we hope to continue it, but we definitely recommend you check it out. And then we'll also be talking a little bit about some really exciting new legislation that's happening here in the state.
Yeah, this was our first time to put on this LICTL Summit. We took advantage of what we've all learned from COVID about offering remote events that, for one thing, we attracted people from throughout the country. I think even maybe some international folks came to that. So that makes it super exciting to meet in that way. And even though it was only about 3 hours long, it was just packed with great information. So we focused there on creating pathways for language course sharing interinstitutionally. So this is especially true in higher education, but we also want to get a focus on dual crediting for college language courses that are offered in high schools. And there's a number of ways that students can get dual credits. In fact, that's a big issue in the legislature this year as well. And then recognition processes for languages through credit testing, like Veronica just described in K-12, and also the seal of biliteracy, which can be offered. Certainly our state seal is offered throughout the public schools in Washington state, public high schools. But there's other options like the global seal of biliteracy that can reach private schools and homeschoolers and college as well, and community college too, for that matter. So the materials from our event are on that Languages Without Borders project website, as the link shows, or you can use the QR code.
As Russ just mentioned, we're really excited that the four of us on the screen, passionate advocates for the Languages Without Borders project, have been collaborating on a book chapter. The name of the book is Sharing LICTLs in Higher Education, Collaboration and Innovation. And our title, the title of our chapter is Languages Without Borders, Promoting Equitable Access to Language Education. And again, the four of us are collaborating on that. In the chapter, we describe the Languages Without Borders project, and we describe it as a model that other folks could follow. We talk about the creative approaches to language enrollment in higher ed and K through 12. We talk about things like granting credits on a transcript, seal of biliteracy, and other ways to credential language proficiency. And also the legislation that we'll share in just a moment is something we're talking about in the chapter as well. So very excited for this, and we'll let folks know when it becomes available.
And I just want to add, so that is coming out through Michigan State University Press. They are the National Less Commonly Taught Language Resource Center, and I sit on that board as their K-12 advisor. So really making sure that we're getting some inways here. So speaking specifically to Washington, currently we have in the House going right now a bill called HB 1228, and that is building a multilingual, multiliterate Washington through dual and tribal language education. This was written by OSPI, a specific ask in coordination with certain legislators and representatives. So we are looking to establish, and subject to available funding, grant programs for establishing or expanding dual language education programs and tribal language education programs. This is to meet the superintendent's goal of all students having access to a dual language program by 2040. It will require provision of supports in service of American Indian and Alaskan Native students. This was done in collaboration with the Office of Native Education at OSPI. It would establish, and this is huge, multilingual skill bonuses for certified instructional staff and para-educators, making sure that we are, recognizing and rewarding through salary our multilingual staff who are already there. So most of that is done through our multilingual education department in OSPI. What comes more for my department of world languages is changes to requirements for the seal of biliteracy, which would be right now it's an opt-in program. Not every district has to. We realize that creates huge inequity, so we are looking to change that, make it mandatory for all districts, and then also hopefully providing some provisional funding for our less commonly taught language custom testing, which can be very expensive and cost prohibitive. So we want to make that. And they are looking to also make some transitional bilingual instructional program, TDIP changes.
I just want to add that even though this brief description that came from the legislation, or I think it was actually the House bill analysis, doesn't call out heritage language, heritage language is also supported in the work with dual language. So it's really exciting.
Thanks, Veronica and Michelle. Russ and I will share a few of the challenges that we've identified both through the summit and the chapter that we're working on. For example, in higher ed, revenue sharing, it can be complicated. For each term that an institution, so here's a model that you could look at. For example, for each term that an institution enrolls students at X institution, then the institution X will pay institution Y a flat sum of a certain amount of money. That's a model that could work for revenue sharing. Transportation can be an issue if students are going physically to campuses to take languages. We've had this at my own institution with our crosstown partner. You could offer things like ride shares, vans, or bus passes to students for travel so they can actually make it to the classes at the other institution.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And transcripts refer to this. Some of the challenges could be, for example, if a student takes a course at X institution and wants to transfer that to another institution, sometimes either the courses aren't recognized or the credit award amounts differ or the course codes don't match. So it's difficult when it comes to not just analyzing the data and have a better sense of what's out there, but just making it easy for students when they transition between schools, whether that's middle school to high school and then to higher ed or community college and then university level. Right now, the pipelines need some refining for the data and also just how the data is retained, protected, and then also have the opportunity to analyze it. We'll get into that a little bit more on a future slide. We talk about on the next bullet point for the administrative load and online course access. For example, if you have a student at an institution, let's say a high school in Grays Harbor, wants to attend a class at maybe Western Washington University, how do we set it up so that it's efficient so they don't have to request a unique login to access the Western Washington University system? So we need to think about this more broadly when we think of serving the entire state K through 16 public education. We think about opening up access, remote access, and retention, and of course, crucially, protection of data going forward.
So what are some solutions that we're looking at? Increased access to language classes statewide by taking advantage of new remote learning technologies. If you have a group of students in Spokane who really want to take Thai, that's their heritage language, why can't they take a class that's being hosted at Western Washington or PLU, right? We want to prioritize rare and critical heritage languages, and that includes working with tribes for native and tribal languages, but also other sorts of indigenous languages, things that are coming out of Central and South America as well that our students speak. Looking at standardizing competency-based credit testing. Currently, there's multiple different scales. How does everything align? You know, are you using ACTFL? Is it CIFR? Lots of different things. So really trying to create that. Something we've been working on very diligently at OSPI is expanding support for open educational resources for less commonly taught languages. Anything that OSPI creates, we host it on our Washington hub. We really want that there. And then Russ, can you speak to data collection?
Definitely, and also just even to add to the OER work is definitely check out the grants that are available to OSPI, and some excellent work's happening, but much more support could be granted, financial support to develop more robust resources, particularly less commonly taught languages. If the resources exist, they're often very expensive and or outdated. There's these other challenges and it requires a lot of work and a lot of financial support. And then we're referring there about data collection. You'll note there's some notes there about proficiencies and tests, seals, for example. What we're trying to get at, and this was hinted on the challenge slide below, and even the bullet point Veronica spoke about standardizing competency-based credit testing, is it's very, right now, data collection is very poor when it comes to understanding what are the students' proficiencies, what languages are they bringing with them, what languages are heritage. Do we have proficiency differences between signed and oral or written? Or is it just unified? They speak this proficiency in the language and is advertised. What test was used to collect and rate this individual? So the goal here is if we could start having more information, for example, student has this proficiency rating, whether on ACTFL or ILR scale, or we could standardize it to one of those. likely ACTFL based on OSPI standards, and then what test was used to get to that metric, when was it taken, and then looking at some additional competencies such as did they earn the seal, the state seal, the global seal, what sort of proficiency pathways. This would be hugely beneficial both for us understanding what community support is going to be needed when it comes to heritage language populations and what language courses we need to expand and support, but also for having students transition, particularly from K-12 to higher ed. Because right now, a lot of this information, particularly as an example at the University of Washington, isn't being collected. And if it is, it's only maybe in a departmental level. So there's not a strong awareness. So as a test case, we're working with the University of Washington Registrar's Office to try to overhaul the student database to collect information at this complex level. And we'll be talking about that more as it goes forward, talk about some of the advantages and challenges, and perhaps hopefully help for advocacy purposes, student support purposes, and then research as well.
Yeah, I just want to add to that right now it's the case that some of the same assessments that we use in K-12 to award students credits or the seal of biliteracy are being used at the university for placement purposes, which is sort of like, here, take this test and we'll decide whether you need to take any language at the university or whether you should go into 102 or 201 or whatever. But then they're ignoring the results, and the students could be earning a recognition like the Global Seal of Biliteracy, but no one's paying attention to that. So it's sort of like turning on your faucet and letting the water run down. Let's not waste any of that language capacity. And right now, we really don't know what the capacity is among adults in our state. We know the languages that are reported on home language surveys in K-12, but we don't know whether those students actually know those languages, speak them, or just can hear and understand them. And so this state would be better situated, all of our states would be, honestly, if we actually thought of languages as a resource, just like we think of trees and energy resources in our states. So here are some next steps. We'd like to invite you to get involved with us. It can be as simple as just thinking about the topics that we shared here. And if you're aware of any stories or cases that we should report on or research further, just letting us know, or challenges that you've had, like the student that was in the Spanish class that was a speaker of Somali and couldn't get recognition for his language, for example. And then, of course, we do want to develop and pass legislation that makes this whole process more official and stable. The pathways for course and credit sharing, and in particular, the funding for LICTL courses and testing. So it's great if we can get funding and less commonly taught and tested languages can get tested, qualify students for seal of biliteracy. But we don't want to leave behind those students that maybe can speak their language, but didn't get to learn to read it and write it. So we want resources to help students get their language to the highest level possible.
Well, thanks again for taking the time to join us for this session. And please do visit the new website and reach out to us, send a note, join the mailing list. If you have any ideas or thoughts, please let us know. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Спасибо.
Thank you.